As many of you know, the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation has been around since 1982 with a dedication to a simple mission of a just and peaceful world, one that is free of nuclear weapons. Over the years, NAPF has engaged thousands of people in this mission by educating about and advocating against the threat of nuclear weapons. Today, perhaps as never before in the Foundation's history, we see these dangers exposed through the Ukraine war. To state the obvious, the use of nuclear weapons in today's world would be unthinkable and would make the devastation that they caused in treacherous attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki seem like child's play. Everything we know today about the impacts the nuclear weapons have had during and after those attacks, including what happened afterwards, as well as the consequences of nuclear testing around the world in places like the Marshall Islands, Kazakhstan, American Southwest, Algeria, Australia, French Polynesia, and elsewhere, to what we know about the impact that they would have in case of nuclear war, tells us that the only acceptable answer to the question of how many nuclear weapons should there be in the world is zero. When humanity's very existence is at stake, the only way to ensure our future is to eliminate nuclear weapons. We must abolish nuclear weapons before they abolish us. Humanity's very existence is at stake. For me, as a mother of 3 children, there's truly nothing that I consider more important than making sure that I leave to my children a world free of nuclear weapons. Thank you. It is now an immense honor for me to introduce to you Cynthia Lazaroff. Cynthia is an expert on U.S.-Russian relations and a documentary filmmaker and producer. Cynthia is the author of Dawn of a New Armageddon, her personal account of the Hawaii missile scare, published in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists on August 6, 2018. By sharing her 38-minute near-death experience that day, she hopes to inspire others to wake up and take action to reduce the escalating and existential nuclear dangers that threaten the future of life on Earth, saying, and I quote, "The experience of feeling that you are about to be hit by a nuclear missile makes it absolutely clear what is most precious. I want us to be motivated not by fear, but by love, to act from love for this precious life, for this gift of a beautiful Earth." Cynthia joined the NAPF board in 2021 and has been the most welcoming and supportive presence for me personally, and I know for everyone else at NAPF as well. She has been a thoughtful, engaged, committed, and yes, loving community member. It is an enormous pleasure to honor her with this award.
I'm so deeply honored to accept this award, to be in the company of Senator Limón and all of you present here today. I look around and want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for all you do for peace and the abolition of nuclear weapons, and especially to all of you at the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation for your extraordinary leadership and dedication, and for championing this quest since your inception 40 years ago. And I especially want to thank Nuclear Age Peace Foundation board member Richard Falk And for those of you who don't know Richard, he's sitting there in the baseball cap. Big round of applause for you, Richard. As an undergraduate at Princeton, I was one of the very lucky ones who had the enormous gift and privilege of studying with Richard. Richard, it was you who first awakened me to the gravity of nuclear dangers. You were the first to encourage and inspire me to embrace a world without nuclear weapons and to become an activist for nuclear disarmament way back then. Without you, I wouldn't be here today. I'm deeply grateful. Thank you, Richard. So many people have brought me to this moment. So many have inspired and supported me. Some of you, dear ones, are here today. Some are many time zones away on the other side of the world, some in countries now at war. Some I've known all my life, and some very dear ones who walked this path with me for many, many years are no longer with us. So dearest friends, family, colleagues, wherever you are, I thank you all with all of my heart. I share this award with all of you. We are all in this together. As Helen Keller once said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. We've all had those moments in our lives when something happens that changes your life forever. Living through the Hawaii nuclear false alarm was one of those moments for me. When the Cold War came to an end, I thought I could stop worrying about nuclear war. All of this changed for me in 2017 when I was asked to make a film and I interviewed dozens of top experts in the US and Russia on nuclear dangers. Pretty much everyone I spoke to awakened me to today's staggering nuclear danger. The two who had the greatest impact on me were former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev and our former Secretary of Defense, William Perry. Secretary Perry said to me that today, and mind you, this was 2017, 5 years ago, before Ukraine. Today, we're at a greater risk of some sort of nuclear catastrophe than we were during the Cold War, and most people are blissfully unaware of this danger. He said, because we don't understand the danger, we make no serious attempt to repair the hostility between the United States and Russia. So we're sleepwalking into another catastrophe. We must wake up. At that moment, I realized that I've been sleepwalking since the end of the Cold War. I came home from those interviews at the height of the fire and fury between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. And nuclear tensions were particularly high in Hawaii because we knew that we'd been marked as a target on Pyongyang's map of nuclear death. So we were actually getting instructions from our government about how to prepare for a nuclear attack and how to survive a nuclear attack. So all of this was present in my awareness on the morning of January 13th, 2018, when I was one of over 1 million people across the Hawaiian Islands who all got the message on our cell phones: ballistic missile threat, inbound to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. At first, it was this feeling of, can this be real? So we started to try to call 911. And we were dialing, and we couldn't get through because everybody was trying to dial 911 at the same time. So my partner said to me, I don't know if this is real, but I'm gonna go get the girls. Our younger daughters were in the town of Kapa'a, 7 miles away. And he rushed to go out the door. And I said, wait a second, we need a plan if it is real. I don't want to be separated. And he said, call me in the car and we'll figure it out. So he was out the door, and I stood there dazed. And I thought, who do I know who's gonna know? And I immediately thought of my dear friend Felicia Cowden, who's a journalist. She's the first to know anything on the island of Kauai, and everybody takes her phone call. And I knew that she would know. So I tried to call her, I left a message, I texted her, I checked her Facebook page, nothing. And after what seemed like an eternity, she called me back. And she said, "Cynthia, the county's telling us to take shelter." And I thought, my God, this is real. I have to take this seriously. So the first thing was, where do you go? There are no designated nuclear shelters on the state of Hawaii. So we decided to shelter in a meditation cave on a neighbor's property, which was the most sealed environment we could think of that we could get to quickly. And then it was, well, what do I take with me? And I looked down at my phone and I had 12% charge. And I thought, oh no, what do I do? And then I thought, I think there are lights in the cave, maybe there's an outlet. And I grabbed a woven bag and I started throwing things in it. My phone charger, my computer charger, my purse, my passport, a shawl to wrap around my face in case of radiation, and leggings for the same reason. And then I thought, food and water. I've done nothing to prepare my family for this. We'd been instructed to stock 1 gallon of water per day for 14 days per person, and enough canned food for everyone for 14 days. And I looked on the counter and I had 2 small bottles of water, and I threw them in the bag, and then a bunch of bananas from the counter, and I was out the door. And I jumped in the car because even though a walk to the cave is only about 7 minutes or so, I didn't know how many minutes I had. And it was only when I got in the car and I started driving towards the cave that I allowed myself to think of my eldest daughter, who had just left for Los Angeles a couple days before. And I thought, I have to call her to say goodbye. And so I started dialing, and it was ringing and ringing, and she wasn't picking up. And I got to a place near the cave, and I parked my car, and I started running towards the hillside that I would go up to the cave. And she still wasn't picking up. And just as I got to the foot of the steps to the cave, she picked up. And I said, "Mackenzie, I don't know if you've heard, but we've all gotten a message on our cell phones that we're going to be hit by a nuclear missile. We're going to go shelter in the cave, and I'll call you again from the cave if I can. But I just want you to know that I love you." And she said, "Mom, I love you too." At that moment, time stopped for me. I stood there frozen. I didn't want to let her go. I didn't know if I was ever going to see her again. And then I thought, wait a second. What if this isn't one nuclear missile from North Korea, but what if it's many nuclear missiles from Russia coming to us, and many from us going back to them? What if this is the beginning of one of those accidental nuclear wars that Secretary Perry and Gorbachev and all the experts I've just been interviewing are so concerned about? What if this is the beginning of the end of life as we know it, of everything and everyone we know and love and cherish on this earth? And at that moment, I heard, "Mom, go, go!" Mackenzie jolted me out of this, and I started running up the hill towards the cave. And as I got to the door, it opened. And it was my neighbor, Colleen. And she walked out smiling, and she said it was a false alarm. Even with everything that I knew about nuclear war and nuclear weapons, nuclear war was unimaginable to me until I went through those 38 minutes. It took our government 38 minutes to get that message out on our cell phones. Now this experience lives inside of me as a mother, as a human being, and it's never going to go away until we eliminate nuclear weapons. As I walked away from the cave, my first feeling was, my God, I'm still here. We're all still here. I was pinching my cheeks. It was this feeling of gratitude that we've been given another chance to get this right. It was this feeling that my life had been returned to me, that we still had time to end the nuclear threat before it's too late. It was a wake-up call and a gift. Then there was this strong feeling of, you need to share this. I want everyone to know what this is like so that we can awaken to act, to change our nuclear story before it's too late. Since then, I've had the chance to share my story in so many ways. Articles, podcasts, films, most recently, the virtual reality experience called On the Morning You Wake to the End of the World, which gives you the chance to step into our shoes and experience the moment-to-moment unfolding of what it's like to spend 38 minutes thinking you're about to be hit by a nuclear missile. To face the impossible choices, decisions, and questions that we had to face. Where are your loved ones? Can you get to them? Where do you go? What do you take with you? How many minutes do you have? Who do you call to say goodbye? The reality is that we could get warning of an imminent nuclear attack at any moment, anytime, anywhere, even right here now in Santa Barbara. Imagine as you sit here over lunch, getting to know the people at your table, that as this is going on, imagine that your cell phone pings and lights up with the message, ballistic missile threat, inbound to Santa Barbara, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Just imagine that for a moment. And then imagine, if you have time, like I did, to call just one person to say goodbye. Who would that be? What would you say? What would you most want to tell them? We now know that in Hawaii, we were all calling our loved ones to say, I love you and goodbye at the same time. Most everyone can relate with this deeply personal human experience and imagine what it's like to call your loved one for what you think might be the last time. This brings the nuclear threat home. It makes it personal. It takes us out of this abstract thinking about nuclear weapons, that it's something out there, that it's too big, that we have no power or agency to do anything about it, that it's all up to the governments and the nuclear policy experts. And it brings it all right home here into our hearts, the gravity of what's at stake. Our lives are at stake. And a nuclear war would mean the end of everyone and all we hold dear. In this way, we can awaken to act out of love, to change our nuclear story. This work belongs to all of us. If nuclear weapons can destroy all of us, we all have a stake and a role to play in eliminating them. Today, we face an increasing risk of escalation to a nuclear exchange over the war in Ukraine, which has been growing since the brutal Russian invasion earlier this year. There are so many pathways to escalation, whether by accident or intention. If we're going to have a prayer of backing ourselves away from the nuclear brink in Ukraine, we must find a way to bring an end to this war. We need to stop the killing, bloodshed, and immense human suffering. We need a global call for a ceasefire. We need to urge our governments to support a ceasefire, dialogue, and diplomacy to achieve a negotiated settlement to end this war. Women waging peace from all sides of the conflict have a crucial role to play in this process. Beyond the Hawaii false alarm, Beyond the nuclear crisis over the war in Ukraine, nuclear weapons, by their very existence, pose a constant existential threat. The only way to prevent one person or 9 nuclear-armed countries from holding the world hostage and unleashing nuclear Armageddon is to abolish, eliminate, and ban nuclear weapons forever. I have no illusions about the formidable obstacles in the way of achieving this, but as Nelson Mandela once said, it always seems impossible until it's done. And thanks to the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons and all of her partner organizations like the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, we now have a treaty that bans all nuclear weapons. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is the greatest ray of light and hope for me in this work. We need to get the US and other nuclear-armed states on board this treaty. And with deep thanks to Senator Limón of California, California is leading the way in states that are supporting the treaty. We can do this. We can ban nuclear weapons. We still have time to act and change our nuclear story. And look around. We're all still here. Santa Barbara is still intact. We can still leave that world without nuclear weapons that Ivana spoke of to our children and grandchildren. Ambassador Tito of Kiribati has said that the struggle for nuclear disarmament is the greatest love story to save humanity. I'm with Ambassador Tito. Abolishing nuclear weapons is about love. It's about saving all we love and hold dear. So let's write that story together, the greatest love story ever told, while there's still time. Thank you.
It is now an immense honor for me to introduce to you Senator Monique Limón. Senator Limón was elected to the California State Senate in November of 2020, representing the 19th Senate District, which includes all of Santa Barbara County and over half of the Ventura County. Prior to being a state senator, she served as the assembly member for District 37. It was then that she introduced Assembly Joint Resolution 33, AJR 33, which passed in August of 2018. This resolution marked a huge step forward in California's support of nuclear disarmament and put the state at the forefront of nuclear abolition. Above all, Senator Limón shows us every day what women leaders can do when we give them a chance to represent us, while serving as a role model for girls and boys throughout the state. Please join me in welcoming Senator Limón to receive her award.
Thank you so much for those words, Ivana, and thank you all for having me. It is difficult to go after Cynthia in really thinking about what this means. For me, this is an important luncheon, but it's also one that's reflective. That's you know, as I heard what it was like to receive a text message, I thought about who my last call would be to and how I would call a 2-year-old who is at daycare and what that would do to my life. And I couldn't help but think of how difficult those moments are, how unexpected they are, and like other things, we think they can never happen until they do. Many of us, or some of us, remember, I think, a time when the possibility of a nuclear exchange between 2 superpowers was a threat. The duck and cover model of what folks learned was a reality. And then we reflected and we made a lot of progress in reducing nuclear weapons and arsenals since the Cold War. In 1982, there were an estimated 70,000 nuclear arms held by countries around the world. Despite the downward trend, the world's combined inventory of nuclear warheads remained at a very high level, with 9 countries alone possessing almost 13,000 warheads as of earlier this year. More recently, events around the globe that destabilized our world and our global progress. We now have countries increasing their number of nuclear weapons, and countries like North Korea leaving the international treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons as part of our reality. Russia invading Ukraine has made nuclear use a bigger concern for our globe. When watching international news, the reality of nuclear war feels like more of an impending concern. If a nuclear weapon is used in war, it has global impacts, national impacts, regional impacts, local impacts, and impacts in our homes. Even a small-scale nuclear war using around 100 nuclear weapons would, in addition to spreading radiation around the world, lead to a cooling of the atmosphere, shortening growing season, food shortages, and global famine. It would also lead to large-scale death, destruction, and refugee crisis. This is why, in 2018, I introduced Assembly Joint Resolution 33. AJR 33 urges the leaders of our federal government to embrace the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and urges our federal government to spearhead a global effort to prevent nuclear war. I see the Honorable Hannah Beth Jackson here, who had a chance to vote in support of this AJR while she was in the legislature. This resolution also called upon our national government to end anyone's sole authority to launch a nuclear weapon. There needs to be more safeguards to protect the world against such grave consequences. At the time, the California legislature was the largest non-national government to support the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. It is really thanks to your advocacy. Your advocacy for years, day in, day out, that we were able to pass this resolution in California. And today, we need your continued advocacy, not just in our state, but across the country and through the globe. It is becoming very clear that nuclear war is not a concern of the past. It is a concern of today, and we all need to work towards a nuclear weapon-free future. As the effects of climate change place increased stress on all of our communities and nations around the globe, and intensify the likelihood of conflict, the danger of nuclear war threats will grow. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara said, speaking about the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, "It was luck that prevented a nuclear war." We cannot rely on luck for our nuclear policy. Together, we must continue to raise our voices, to advocate, and do what we can to ensure that our children can truly live in a nuclear-free and peaceful world. Many have asked me if I think that this is a lofty goal. If I don't dream it, I don't see it. If I don't see it, I cannot direct it. And as your state representative, I must believe that this is a goal worth fighting for. Thank you all for the recognition, but more than anything, thank you for your commitment to working alongside advocates and leaders in our region, in our state, in our country, in our globe, to ensure that we live and we fight for a world without nuclear weapons. Thank you.
I'm so very pleased now to introduce to you Hyundai Chicovero, the Santa Barbara County Youth Poet Laureate Ambassador. The Youth Poet Laureate program amplifies the voices of young poets and provides them with platforms so they can use their art to actively work for the betterment of their communities. Hyundai is the University Honors Program student, double majoring in psychology and philosophy at Cal Lutheran University. She's a proactive activist for social justice, for community empowerment of underserved populations, and anti-racism. She's a published poet and has won the Martin Luther King Jr. Essay and Poetry Competition 6 times. She plans to continue her social justice work by studying law and creating platforms for other young people to use their talents to promote peace and equality throughout the world. Let's give a warm welcome to Hyundai.
Hi everyone, thank you. I just want to say thank you again for having me. Think of as like a huge issue, like it doesn't first come to mind, but it is very important as I am learning. So yeah, thank you again for having me here. I'm happy to help honor Senator Limón and Cynthia Lazaroff for their tireless efforts. I find it really inspirational. Many women's voices are left out a lot when dealing with peace and just like public policy and all these national issues. So I think that's also really important to be bringing that to light. So I wrote a poem for this event. I titled it Dilemma, just kind of like the first thing that came to my mind, being like a philosophy major. So yeah. Man made an invention capable of taking out a population, capable of self-demise and of taking out its own kind, for the sake of resolving conflict. The greatest tragedy is to strike with the blade of a double-edged sword, to believe that bravely harming someone else and the planet while at it, and the millions of innocent lives which aren't yet done being lived, is worth finishing a dispute. Of all methods to be used, we choose the one with the most destruction and the least resolution. When we use weapons of mass destruction, we are holding on to a flame and hoping that throwing it will harm the opponent. We are watching innocent people die and become sitting ducks on our own grave. On August 6th of 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb nicknamed Little Boy. Perhaps a twisted form of symbolism to demonstrate the harm they intended to cause, with long-lasting effects estimated of causing at least 80,000 immediate casualties. There are long-term effects of short-lived and irrational actions, land that is ruined for decades, people scarred both physically and mentally. The issue of the atomic bomb is significantly overlooked with more and more building. What is essentially a death wish to global humanity, we should not wait until we are in a war to speak about the issue, to call for the permanent halting in building atomic weapons. The blink of an eye is all it takes, and we should not wait for instability to then address this issue. The time for changing is now. Thank you.
So, how many of you have been to the memorial in Hiroshima or Hiroshima? I'm never sure quite. You know, that alone should be enough for us all to realize the impact that nuclear proliferation, nuclear war, a bomb can have on our planet. I don't want to get too graphic, but I can't help but remember the photographs as young children were being photographed with their skin literally sliding off of their bodies. Just imagine that. the devastation to an entire city. And then we did it again. We are the only nation in the world that has ever used nuclear weapons. So our ability to call for a bully pulpit is a little bit slim. At the same time, we are as a nation the most responsible and need to be the most responsive to make sure this never happens again.
Thank you, Senator Jackson, so very much. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us today. We are so grateful for your support.